Buck sucks and you can't convince me otherwise.
But before we can understand why Buck sucks, we have to understand who Buck is.
I am the Juggernaut!
Buck is a flank. He has 2,300 health and he's equipped with a shotgun. His shotgun deals direct damage on his hit scan. It fires small pieces of shrapnel every 1 second, dealing up to 700 damage, and it has a maximum ammo count of 5. It's fully effective up to 35 units. His alternate fire is his net shot. His net shot is a projectile that he shoots out that deals 200 damage to a single enemy and reduces their movement speed by 50% for 2 seconds. It has a maximum range of 250 units and a cooldown of 10 seconds. Buck's ability 1 is Recovery. It allows him to channel his inner energy and heal for 1000 over 1.5 seconds. It cannot be cancelled and it has a cooldown of 10 seconds. Lastly, Buck is equipped with his Heroic Leap. It is his only movement ability and it allows him to leap forward a great height and distance based on the angle at which he activates his ability. It also has a cooldown of 10 seconds. Buck, like every other champion, comes with 3 talents that he can choose between. His first talent choice is Ensnare. Ensnare increases the damage he deals to targets slowed by net shot by 20% and increases the duration of net shot slow by 0.5 seconds. Additionally, the damage increase lasts a minimum of 2 seconds. Buck's second choice for talent is Bounce House. Bounce House changes his Heroic Leap so that it now deals 600 damage and applies knockback to enemies within 20 units of his landing location. And lastly, we have Bulk Up. Bulk Up allows recovery to instantly heal you for 400 and increase your maximum health by 300 for 5 seconds whenever you use recovery.
As the beefiest close-range flank, Buck wants to always be in his enemy's personal space. To help him with this, he has his Heroic Leap, which lets him close the distance and jump into his max effective range. He has his Net Shot to slow enemies so they can't exactly leave his max effective range. And he also has Recovery. It's his self-heal ability. It lets him keep his HP up and outlast his enemies or keep the fight going without making him run away or just die. His shotgun also incentivizes this kind of playstyle because it's most effective in close quarters. You're not going to be able to use it to poke your enemies and stuff like that.
It burns!
Now you might believe that Buck is actually a good character, and I wouldn't blame you for this, but that's because Buck is a very stealthy boy, contrary to his size. What you're not aware is that Buck actually gives players the illusion that he is better than he actually is. How does Buck do this, you may be wondering? Well, that's very easy. Firstly, we have Bounce House, his most prevalent talent. It provides the burst damage that he lacks in his base kit. It provides greater utility on Heroic Leap because a knockup it does can cancel movement abilities in use, displace enemies, and disorient players. Lastly, it's the most prevalent talent, giving players the impression Buck has higher kill potential than he actually does. The second reason that Buck gives players the illusion that he is better than he actually is a card called Stomping Ground. Stomping Ground acts as a necessary crutch for him. It allows Buck to overextend with little drawback, it oversimplifies his cooldown management, and it makes his abilities seem stronger because they can be used really frequently. And lastly, the final reason that you might be convinced that Buck is stronger than he actually is another loadout card called Momentum. This card in particular provides exceptional amounts of damage reduction for a very long period of time. It pairs extremely well with Stomping Ground and Bounce House, and it provides the sustain Buck needs, but otherwise doesn't actually have in his base kit.
The second main reason Buck sucks is that he is a close quarters flank that doesn't actually excel at combat in that range. He has horribly underwhelming shotgun damage. It's his primary form of damage. He doesn't have any abilities that naturally support or prop up any extra damage for him in his base kit. He has to run a talent to get that. And because it is his only primary source of damage, he needs it for dueling. His abilities are either used to get into the fight or sustain it, not to actually win the fight. So he has to rely entirely on the shotgun, and when it does like no damage, you're not going to kill anything before you die. Next is his inability to chase or force an enemy to actually stay within close quarters reliably. Netshot's base cooldown is too long to use it reliably to keep enemies within Buck's optimal dueling range. They can either use a movement option to get away, and then your Netshot's already out of effect. You know, it only lasts 2 seconds. Or even without a movement option, Buck's TTK is 4 seconds without headshots on average for squishies that aren't tanked. and your net shot only lasts for half of that. So they're just gonna get away from you because Buck isn't very fast either. The slow it's just too short to fully capitalize on it because, like I said, your TTK is twice the time. But then you have Heroic Leap. You have to use it to get yourself in their range. You have to. Buck has no other movement option, and he simply cannot fight at a distance. You don't have a say in the matter. You either get in their personal space or you do nothing. And because you have to use Heroic Leap to get into the fight, you can't escape with it because it has a really long cooldown. And if they run from you, you also can't chase them because you just used your ability to get to them. So he can't chase either. You can't stay within close quarters.
Buck's ability cooldowns are unbalanced and a detriment to him. Not all of his abilities provide enough value for the cooldown cost. For example, Net Shot only provides a 2-second slow and 200 damage, and that simply just does not justify a 10-second cooldown. Most movement abilities and resilience make Net Shot feel underwhelming on a 10-second cooldown. Secondly, Heroic Leap, when compared to other similar movement options, has an egregiously long cooldown. Most other similarly powered movement options typically have lower cooldowns and sometimes even provide better utility in general. And as a flank, movement is integral to Buck's performance, and his long cooldown prevents him from flanking as effectively as other flanks. Not only that, but his long ability cooldowns all being 10 seconds forces players to use cooldown reduction cards in his loadouts, and it severely slows down his core gameplay without them.
Buck overall feels underwhelming as a flank when not using Bounce House, Momentum, and Stomping Ground in tandem. He lacks burst-like damage potential in his base kit, which every other flank gets. An example being Voktu's infamous combo of Kunai, bombs, Kunai, you're dead. Or Maeve's daggers, pants, daggers, you're dead. Buck also has one of the longest times to kill for a flank if you're not landing headshots. The only person with a similarly long time to kill is Eevee, because their damage outputs are similar and Eevee's incapable of headshotting, so it's not like she can raise her damage potential. And like Buck, she also has one primary source of damage. But the point is, it forces Buck into having to sustain a fight. So you're there doing your job much longer than other flanks, and enemies can just turn around and be like, oh, there's a Buck here, and he's just a sitting duck, let's kill him. Now, this is even worse because Buck's way of naturally sustaining a fight is his ability Recovery. But Recovery's effectiveness is severely lessened as the match goes on. As a byproduct of this, Buck is required to run some form of DR in his loadout. He has to sustain a fight. He's forced into it by virtue of how he's designed. And Recovery, one, if you're not getting the heal from it and you're just locked in animation, well, you're dead. And two, it doesn't actually heal you. So you need DR. It's not a decision, you're forced into it. And he lacks consistent and reliable mobility in his base kit as well. So unlike other flanks who can schmoove around, get in and out, chase enemies, do their job, because that is the literal job of a flank. You're an assassin in the night. Quick, fast, deadly. Not Buck. Buck is big, slow, easy to kill. So he's just really underwhelming. I can't see a reason to pick him over other flanks.
And the last, but certainly not least reason why Buck is terrible is because of the illusion of choice. Buck suffers from only having a single viable talent. Bulk Up is hard countered by the current cauterize system. It lacks any burst damage, it requires DR to be able to use Recovery to properly sustain a fight, and Recovery locking him in animation makes Bulk Up not feel as impactful as Bounce House in a duel. For that matter, it doesn't feel as impactful as Ensnare in a duel either. Secondly, Ensnare does provide a damage increase, but it does not feel as impactful as Bounce House because Shotgun has low damage output at base, and the amp that Ensnare provides is not nearly enough for it to feel nearly as impactful in a duel. The low duration of net shot slow also means that Buck can only get in 1 to 2 shots reliably, and it lacks comparable burst potential to Bounce House in general. The other reason Buck suffers from an illusion of choice is because he has very few loadout card options. Buck is excessively incentivized to use Stomping Ground, Momentum, and Deep Breath in all of his loadouts. Reconstruction, Concussion, and Stomping Ground are necessary to make Buck's cooldowns manageable even a little, because they're so long. Seismic Wave and Exhilarate, for example, do fundamentally the exact same thing, but neither of them are worth running because they're just completely outclassed by Stomping Ground in and of itself. There's an over-reliance on Momentum and Stomping Ground in almost every loadout possible for Buck because they're simply the only way to make him work properly. And the necessity of loadout cards that provide cooldown reduction and damage reduction inhibits players' ability to experiment with other loadout cards in general. It's for all of these reasons that we feel that Buck generally sucks. But worry not, we have also come with a solution.
Oh, I didn't see you there.
And now we present our rework/rebalance of Buck, the Unyielding. We've pretty much left his base parameters untouched. What we did touch is pretty much everything else in his kit. Unilaterally, because boy did he need a lot of help. Firstly, when you look at his primary fire, the shotgun, we made it so that instead of 700 damage at base, it deals 800 damage. But this comes with the caveat that instead of having 35 units of fully effective range, he now only has 30 units of fully effective range.
We nerfed his range so that technically at 35 units, he'll still do around 700 damage like he did before. So the feel of his gun will be similar. So Buck mains, or people who are very familiar with Buck, won't have to deal with relearning his range or getting comfortable with his weapon again. And Buck is actually more of a threat up close like he's supposed to be. He is supposed to dominate up close. It also gives him a slightly shorter time to kill if you're landing headshot. So it rewards skilled play and gives him the TTK he needs to keep up with other flames.
The second change we made is to his net shot. It's a very simple change. All we did is take his cooldown from 10 seconds to 5 seconds. Now that may look scary on paper, but you'll find later on that we actually got rid of his concussion card cooldown reduction entirely. So you don't have to worry about that being on a 0-second cooldown.
And the reason for cutting his cooldown in half is 5 seconds it's fair. It's fair for what the ability provides. There are other abilities in Paladins with a 4, 5, or 6 second cooldown that provide either more damage, more utility, or more interesting ways to play. So net shot on a 5 second cooldown, perfectly fair. It lets you use it more reliably to keep enemies in range so Buck can fulfill his niche. And if you miss it, because it is a projectile skill shot technically, you're not punished with a 10-second cooldown.
Recovery we left unchanged because we felt that it's fine. It's perfect the way it is for now. But the next change we did make was to his Heroic Leap. And again, that's just a simple cooldown reduction in base kit. We took it from 10 seconds to 8 seconds.
At base, his Heroic Leap does no damage, offers no form of CC or utility. It is literally just a movement on. So 10 seconds was way too long to justify. Plus, reducing its cooldown by 2 seconds lets you use it more reliably to escape, chase, or get in. And overall should allow Buck's gameplay to be a little bit faster than it was before. You don't have to wait as long before doing it.
The final change to his base kit that we made is more of an optional change, and that's with his ultimate. His ultimate is pretty underwhelming as far as ultimates are concerned in general, so we thought that allowing him to have a little more self-sustainability would further feed into his Juggernaut-style playstyle without over-complicating the ultimate. So we just gave it an instant full heal that's uncauterizable on top of the ammo refill and increased fire rate you get.
This was to further set his ultimate apart from other abilities or ultimates that were made very similar to his, such as Tyra's Crossfire, which increases her fire rate as well, causes her to not consume ammo, and actually gives her increased movement speed, unlike Buck. Tiberius' stance, his combat trance, is also similar to Buck's ultimate in that it provides increased fire rate and movement speed, although his does expend ammo and it's an ability. This plays into Buck's identity. He is the self-sustained flame. That's why he has the ability recovery, and it's a simple change.
The next set of changes we made is to every single one of his talents. So we took Old Ensnare, and all we did was increase the minimum duration that it lasts for from 2 seconds to 2.5 seconds to match along with the 0.5 second increase he gets from Ensnare in general.
This should give a little bit of wiggle room on timing your shot, because missing a shot as Buck is very punishing. It also means you can more consistently hit 2 shots rather than just 1. If you take a little longer to try and line up your hit. It also makes the talent overall more consistent, and it still guarantees the talent won't give him 3 shots. You don't have to worry about that. You'll never get 3 shots with this change. So it's a consistency buff, not a true buff.
The next talent that we changed was Bulk Up, and this happens to be the biggest change we've made to Buck's kit in general. We took his old ability, which allows him to instantly heal for 400 and increase his maximum health by 300 for 5 seconds when he uses recovery, and instead made it so that it increased his base maximum health by 100, and recovery was now an instant burst heal with an additional 200 health on it. So instead of healing for 1000 over a duration of 1.5 seconds, you would now heal for 1200 instantly.
Even before the change to Cauterize, where everybody naturally gets it and it ramps up as the battle goes on, Buck's Bulk Up was underwhelming and underperforming compared to his other two talents. It's just too easy to counter. It locked him in animation, so you were just a sitting duck who would die. It was a horrible talent, nobody ran it, and the people who did run it didn't really get value out of it. Yeah, you wouldn't die, but you also couldn't do anything. So you just kind of stare at people. This change will make his Bulk Up talent much more viable in 90% COD. As I'm sure most people have already noticed, burst healers are much better now. By the virtue of the way 90% COD works, any throughput healers or healing of any kind done while COD is applied is absolutely decimated. It's negligible and hardly even worth considering. But if you can get yourself out of COD, which promotes good play, you will get the full effect. Buck being able to get an instant heal lets him use his cards for utility and really take advantage of his Bulk Up talent. It lets him heal immediately after getting himself out of danger for at least like 0.2 seconds. It's a burst heal. And it speeds up his play because now he doesn't have to wait for the animation before trying to move on or get back into the fight.
Additionally, the 100 extra health is to help preserve the bulky feeling you would get from the 300 increased maximum health you would get before. Now, the last change we made to his talents may look like a severe nerf, but it's not. So we took his 600 damage and lowered it down to 400 damage, and we made it so that the cooldown of Heroic Leap is increased from 8 seconds back up to 10 seconds. And this was primarily to help keep it feeling the exact same way it currently does.
With the buff to his shotgun going from 700 damage to 800, you still do your 2-shot combo on Bounce House, and you now have an additional 100 before the landing hit and after. So removing 200 from Bounce House itself just balanced the number. It's the exact same amount of damage, nothing's changed. And increasing its cooldown guarantees that it cannot be abused even harder than before. It's basically the same talent. When it comes to his loadout cards, we made a lot of changes, small changes, and sometimes no changes at all. As you can see here, Street Sweeper, perfectly fine, no changes. Stomping Ground, as we've already discussed, was simply too viable and too powerful. It was a staple card. So we simply reduced the cooldown reduction it would give you from 14% scaling per level to 10% scaling per level. It's still a good elimination cooldown reduction card, still very viable, but it's no longer the end-all be-all, especially with his reduced cooldowns. It will definitely help you and feel good, but it's no longer literally necessary to play. Next is Rapid Sustain. We felt that it needed just a small buff to make it a little more viable. They didn't buff any of these cards that promote healing when 90% COT was put into effect. I feel they need a little more power to even be worth considering. So we just gave it a small buff from 5% scaling to 6% scaling. Hopefully it'll help you a little more, especially when running Bulk Up or Bully. For No Escape, didn't change it at all. Same with Tangle. Then we go to Gotcha. Gotcha has always been a very good card. It provided mobility where he didn't have it. Usually you'd use your jump to get in, and because you slowed them with Net Shot once in the fight, you'd get your movement speed from it, and it would let you keep up a little better, even if they tried to use a movement option to get away. But now that you have the option of running more cards at higher levels because you're not forced into Momentum or Stomping Ground, the likelihood of people running Gotcha is much higher. And so is the probability of them running it at higher level. For that reason, 10% is simply too strong. 8% is still pretty powerful, but not busted. A lot of characters have CC that can stop you, and you can no longer just zoom around. Next is Concussion, which we completely changed in its entirety. Net Shot is now locked to a 5-second cooldown unless you buy Chronos or you run a cooldown reduction card like Stomping. New Concussion lowers the cooldown of recovery by 0.6 seconds scaling per level when you hit an enemy with Net Shot. You can use Net Shot pretty often, so you can combo a heal into especially with bulk up. You can heal, immediately Net Shot somebody for the cooldown reduction, and then Net Shot will be up again before your recovery is. So you can do it again and combo that way. So what you see here, you can actually probably get double the value out of it, which is why the number is so low. You didn't want people to just reset recovery. Next up is Bully. This looks like a nerf, and it technically is, but with his increased base damage on his shotgun, the numbers should even out to be about the same as where it was before. And for people who might have suggested that we lower it further because it's too powerful, 90% caught also counters Bully, so it's not too powerful. Early game, it's a very good card. I run it myself. Late game, you'll definitely feel the drop off. So it really is just a matter of what you prefer. If you want to run this to try and steamroll early game, or something else that'll benefit you throughout the entire map. There's no changes made to Vigor. For Reconstruction, we've also locked recovery to 10-second cooldown, unless you run Chronos or Stop the Ground. Now Reconstruction increases the amount of health healed from recovery by 80 scaling. This is to bring back some of the healing we actually took out of Bulk Up, and to further enhance the talent. It's if you really want to self-sustain with recovery running Bulk Up, this will help you do so, especially coupled with rapid sustain. Next up is Giga Siphon. It used to increase your movement speed by 12% scaling per level, if I remember correctly. Check that really quick. Yep, 12% scaling per level while it was active. 12% is a lot, yeah, but it was just a bad card. You were locked in animation anyways and couldn't do anything. However, letting you have that movement speed just running freely while running Bulk Up is too powerful. So instead what we did is locked it to 2 seconds with 8% scaling per level. It's just as strong as Gotcha, but 2 seconds guarantees that even for 0.5 seconds after using it, without running Bulk Up, you'll have the effect and you can try and make use of it, get in a shot, jump somewhere, something. And if you are running Bulk Up, you get full 2 seconds fully utilizing that, so no longer does the card feel underwhelming. Next is Deep Breath. Reduce your damage taken by 4% scaling per level for 2 seconds after activating recovery. We nerfed this by a full 2% scaling per level. It was simply very powerful. It is stronger than a lot of damage reduction cards that even the tanks have. And with new Bulk Up, you'd be able to just proc the card and immediately take advantage of it. It's just too much DR. It is. It's overwhelming. So we lowered it to this, which is much more fair. If you want the full effect and you run it at max, good on you. Get that 20%. But we definitely feel that any more than that would be too powerful. Next is Seismic Wave. You no longer need to really reduce the cooldown of Buck's Heroic Leap at base. Its new effect grants you an 80 health shield scaling per level when landing within 20 units of an enemy with Heroic Leap. We chose 20 units because that's the exact range noted in Bounce House, and we wanted to keep things uniform. Next is Momentum. It didn't get quite as hard a nerf as Deep Breath, but it was still very strong compared to even tanked damage reduction cards, and just damage reduction in general. So we nerfed it from 5% scaling per level to 4% scaling per level. Next is Leg Day. A slight buff from 5% scaling to 6% scaling. This is an optional change. Buck doesn't necessarily need it one way or the other, but it would be a nice quality of life thing. Lastly, we have Exhilarate. Landing within 20 units of an enemy with Heroic Leap reduces its cooldown by 20% scaling per level. Internal cooldown force. This gives him something Buck has never had before. The ability to escape. Say you jump in. Oh no! I didn't see that the entire enemy team was behind this wall right next to the one guy I wanted to kill. I'm screwed. I'm dead. I can't get out. This card, if run at max, will give you a full reset and let you leave like other things can. It can also be used with Bounce House to give him the chain effect he used to have. This was to really preserve the feel of Bounce House. I'm well aware it's his most popular talent and people consider it the most fun. And I wanted to preserve that playstyle. But I put it here instead of in Stomping Ground so that you can no longer reset all of your cooldowns and you're not as steamrolly. The 4-second internal cooldown promotes good play. You can no longer just spam it. And if you're playing right and you're taking time in your duels, on average, they'll take about 4 seconds anyway without headshots. So your internal cooldown should be down anyways. It's just to keep you from trying to spam it. It shouldn't interfere too much in gameplay.
Good as new.
Lastly, we wanted to end on our hopes for Buck's future. It is our hope that he properly fulfills his niche as the bulky close-range juggernaut that we want him to be one day. We hope that he has more flexibility in playstyle and loadout card options in the future. We would like for him to be more viable at higher levels of play, and we would especially like for him to feel as impactful as new flanks that are being released and his more powerful flank counterparts. Let us know down in the comments below what you think about our rework. If you have any points you think you might add that could change our opinions or different balance ideas that you've come up with, please let us know. We will be posting a link to the doc in the description down below. Thanks for hearing us out.
Thank you.